All right, we're going to use the basic scientific calculator. This is all this is practicing plugging these into our calculators, just so you can get familiar with it, because we're going to get some word problems here eventually. So the tangent of 134 degrees, what we're going to do is really type in is 134 plus 20 divided by 60. And that's how easy way when you can do if you don't have a graphing calculator, because it's always going to have to be a basic one. In other words, guys, don't bring graphing calculators to your exams. It's not allowable. You got to have basic calculators, okay? So how we're going to type it in is you can even do 134 plus 20 divided by 60 and then hit your tangent button, okay? Same thing here with secant. Your calculator only has the sine, cosine, and tangent button. It doesn't have a secant. Well, to realize that secant is just the reciprocal of cosine. So it's 1 over the cosine of 247 plus 50 over 60. Okay? And then cosine here is just going to be the cosine of 117 plus 36 over 60. Okay? So sometimes, depending on your calculator, sometimes it's better just to type in your angle than hit the tangent button. Here what you're going to do for the second one, well here let's start with the first one. Let me get your answer for you. Okay, so what I did is 134 plus 20 divided by 60, got that answer, which is basically 134.33333. Then I hit tangent and it came out with negative 1.024. Okay, and again I rounded that. Basically 5 significant digits, because if you look in the original problem, 13420, there's basically 5 digits there. Okay. Now for this next one, it's got a little bit different. We've got the fraction. But what I would recommend starting out to do is first of all type this angle in. So 247 plus, looks like 50 divided by 60. And that's basically 247.8333. I'm going to hit my cosine button. Okay. And really what you're looking at is 1 over negative 0.377. It's got a bunch of other stuff after that. Now, if you don't want to have a rounding error as much, there's a button on your calculator that if you look closely, this 1 over x, and that's basically what's happening. We want to find 1 over this value right here, or it's telling you to take the reciprocal. And that's going to come out to be negative 2.65, we'll go 0, and we'll call that our answer. Okay? And this last one right here, all we want to do is take, first of all, 117, add on 36 divided by 60. It's 117.6. Hit the cosine button, and it comes out to be negative 0.4633 by the time we round. Okay? All right. Last but not least, example 5. We're going to use the basic scientific calculator so we can find theta, where theta has to be between 0 and 360. There's a little more work involved in here, unfortunately, because let's look here. We want to know y values, and when are my y values coming out negative? Well, if you look at that unit circle, y values are negative in 2 areas, quadrant 3 and quadrant 4. So we're going to actually be getting 2 answers here. Okay. Easiest way to solve for this, when you have sine of theta is equal to negative 0.7660, anytime you want to find an angle, this is where you're going to use on your calculator those sine inverse buttons. So this is the same thing as saying when theta is equal to sine inverse of negative 0.7660. You only use these inverse buttons, the sine inverse, cosine inverse, and tangent inverse, when you're asked to find an angle. And if you haven't located those inverse buttons, remember they're right behind the sine button, the cosine, and the tangent. You're just going to have to hit second that. Okay? So type in the negative 0.7760, then hit second sine, and what comes out that I got this time is a negative 50.89578, and it keeps going on from there. Now we don't want to give our answers in terms of this. We want to give our answers in degrees and minutes. Okay, so we already have our answers. It's going to be negative 50 degrees, but how do I convert this decimal into minutes? Remember, all you have to do is take that decimal part, only the decimal part, and multiply by 60. So when I did that, what came out was basically like 53.74, so we're going to call it as 50 degrees and 54 minutes. Alright, now I've done all this work and I'm like, okay, I'm done, let's box it up and call it finished. Well, no, because remember, going back to the original part of the problem, my answers have to be in terms of quadrants 3 and 4. Negative 50 degrees is not in quadrants 3 and 4, okay? It has to be within one full rotation, okay? So if I start at here at the positive x-axis and I go down 50 degrees, where does that land me at? So technically, if you can think about it here, my answer for quadrant 4 is going to be 360 degrees minus that 50 degrees and 54 minutes. Okay? My answer in quadrant 3 is going to be starting here. Just remember, here down 50 degrees is equal to here down 50 degrees, or 180 up 50, or here up 50. All of these are all going to give you the same answer. So if I start at 360 and go down 50 degrees, or if I start at 180 and go down 50 degrees, it's the same thing as going 180 degrees plus 50 degrees and 54 minutes. Okay? So in this case, I'm going to kind of help you guys out. You would change 360 to 359 in 60 minutes and then go from there. And this should get you, let's see, 309 degrees. So 359 minus 50 is 309. And 60 minutes minus 54 minutes is 6 minutes. So there's my answer in quadrant 4. And my answer in quadrant 3, since I'm just adding, I don't need to worry about converting that to like 179 and 60. It's just 180 and 50 is 230 degrees and 54 minutes. And so there's my answer. Why don't y'all take 2 seconds and double check. Let's plug these answers back into our original problem. There'll be a little bit of a rounding error. Let's see, just plug in, let's say 230. So go 230 plus 54 divided by 60. So 230.9, and then hit your sign button. And what you'll find, let me go back to this. When you hit your sign button, you get a negative 0.77604. So there's a tiny little rounding error, but there you go. There's your answer. Okay, so let me take a second to clean up some of this work, and we're going to go on to example B. Okay, so in example B, kind of doing the same process again. What we're more familiar with and what our calculators know is just sine, cosine, and tangent. And this gives us cotangent. So just realizing that if I want to write this as tangent, then I need to take the reciprocal. So it's 1 over 0.7177. And tangent is positive in quadrants 1 and quadrant 3. So we're going to be looking to give answers there. Okay, so let's first find out what our answer is when we do this. And the first thing we got to do, first of all, is write it as theta is equal to tan inverse. Just remember, anytime you're finding the actual angle is when you're going to use your inverse buttons. Okay. And if we plug all this in your calculator, just do 1 divided by 0.7177 and then hit your tangent inverse button. And when I do this, I get theta come out to be 54.33299, so forth. So when we actually convert this to degrees and minutes, we want to, keep the 54, that's our degrees, and then multiply that 0.3329 times 60, and that comes out rounding to 20 minutes. Okay, so we want to convert 54 degrees in 20 minutes to really what's their answers in quadrant 1 and 3. Well, for quadrant 1, we're pretty much done because 54 degrees in 20 minutes is in quadrant 1. So we can box that up and call that finished. When we get to quadrant 3, let's look here. And again, I'm going to show you guys this. If I start here at the positive x-axis and go that direction 54 degrees, it's the same thing as if I started at 180 and subtracted 54 degrees. I would get the exact same answer. Or if I started at 180 and added 54, or 360 and subtracted 54, you're always going to get the same answer. So for quadrant 3, which is right in here, I basically need to start at 180 and add on, so I'm going in the positive direction, add on 54 degrees and 20 minutes. So our angle in quadrant 3 is going to be 180 and 54 is going to be 234 degrees and 20 minutes. And with some of these, it's always nice to kind of check your answer. So if we go back to the I guess you wouldn't really go to the original problem, you'd still go to this tangent one, and I would see is if I did tangent of 234 degrees in 20 minutes, let's check this out. Go type 234 plus 2 divided by 6, get 234.3333, and then hit your tangent button, and it gets you basically, so the tangent of 234 and 20 degrees tells you it's 1.3933. Well, let's check. Is 1 divided by the 0.7177? I type that in, it's the exact same thing, so that checks out. And the same thing would then check out with that. So we call this one done. Alright, so let's go on to our very last one for today, and we'll call this lesson finished. With this part C, it's kind of like a lot with cotangent. We don't have a secant button in our calculator, but we know secant is the same thing as cosine by the sense that it's reciprocals. So we're going to go 1 over the negative 2.107. And cosine, which is our x values, is going to be negative. It looks like in quadrants 2 and quadrants 3. So that's where we're going to look to get our answers. Okay. So this is the same thing if we use our calculators. If I want to solve for theta, we're going to be taking cosine inverse of 1 over negative 2.107. So plugging that in our calculator comes out with a theta equals, looks like 118 degrees. And it said 0.3333. So if I take that 0.3333 and multiply it by 60, it's going to give us the total, looks like 20 minutes. Okay, so 118 degrees and 20 minutes. Alright, and we want to convert this to, looks like, where is 118 degrees and 20 minutes? Well, if it's 90 over to there and 180 to there, it looks like 118 is actually in quadrant 2. So there's part of our answer. Actually, we can finally consider it one of our first ones as 118 degrees and 20 minutes as one of our answers. So I'm going to box that up, call that finished. Now all we have to do is figure out how am I going to go about this for quadrant 3. So let's think. We know that from 180 back to 118 would be the same thing as 180 forward. So how far is it from 180 back to 118? So 180 degrees back to 118 degrees in 20 minutes, or 179 degrees in 60 minutes back to 118 degrees in 20 minutes. So I subtract 179 minus 118, we get 61 degrees, and 60 minus 20 is 40. So what it's saying is the difference between 180 and here is 61 degrees. So 180 and here also needs to be 61. Okay? So let me kind of take some of this away so we can get some more room in here. And what I want to basically do is now to get my last answer, which is going to be in quadrant 3, all I have to do is say it's going to be 180 degrees plus that 61 degrees in 40 minutes that we just found. So 180 plus 61 is going to give us 241 degrees and 40 minutes. And that's my answer for quadrant 3.